Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's second video, this will take us to around the 8th of January. We'll be able to extend out a little bit beyond that actually with the extended GFS, which runs to around a couple of weeks. So I'll bring you up to date with weather through the first week, 10 days or so of January. Have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. Stratospheric warming is still taking place and strengthening over the North Pole at the moment. At the end of the video, I'll just talk you through the temperature and precipitation anomalies from the EC 30-day forecast. We normally do that on a Tuesday. It updates Tuesdays and Fridays, the 30-day ECMWF. On a Friday, it actually updates for 46 days, I think, but those charts are very restricted. However, the update at the Hungarian Met Office does happen on a Tuesday and on a Friday. We normally do the update for that at Gazlovis on a Tuesday, because Tuesday this week was Christmas Day, and next week it will be New Year's Day, so won't have time to do that for the next couple of weeks. But I'll just include that at the end of the video, because it does get quite interesting as it goes further into January. I'll talk you through that very shortly. We'll start off though with what's happening in the stratosphere. So this is how things are looking from the JMA at 10 HPA right now. This black line is lifting up now. You'll notice it's been quite a slow struggle to move this upwards, but we are now seeing quite a significant warming of the stratosphere at 10 HPA. The temperature anomalies are on the side, and you can see that black line is now up to that level, which is kind of like between around minus 30 and minus 40 degrees. That's where it was a few days ago, down around close to minus 75. So it's lifted up some 10, 20, 30, it's lifted around 40 degrees in the past 3 or 4 days. That is quite a substantial warming. I think got a little way to go as well. It should get up to around that kind of level, I would have thought, by tomorrow or Sunday. It should be up to close around minus 20. Probably won't go higher than that. I think that does reach the threshold of a sudden stratospheric warming at 10 HPA. It's certainly more than a minor warming. I think it does reach a level of a SSW. Doesn't get to sort of minus 10 or 0 degrees as some of these events can do. But nevertheless, this is still a very substantial warming of the stratosphere that is occurring at 10 HPA at the moment. And I will do tomorrow's video. I expect to see this black line, as I say, up somewhere close to around minus 20. So I reckon it's got another 15 or so degrees to rise. That's happening today, of course. And it still looks like we're going to reverse the zone of winds. So this is from weatheriscool.com. Lots of different lines here, but I haven't got time to talk you through. But what you really need to know is that the black line is kind of like the trend line. So we are in a strengthening time of the year in terms of the strength of the zone of winds. They're getting stronger and stronger at the moment, but they should be getting stronger and stronger at the moment on average. But this season we are really seeing a rapid decrease, a deacceleration, if you like, of the zonal winds. That's where we are right now. Already pretty weak, a lot weaker than average, with the zonal winds at 10 HPA and the GFS ensembles and the 4 CFS V2 runs indicated by the 3 pink and 1 blue line. They are all going into reverse through the opening days of January. That's the level that you need to get to have a reversal of the zonal winds at 10 HPA. So this stratospheric warming, sudden stratospheric warming, is going to be enough to send the winds into, the zonal winds into reverse through the first week of January. Which should eventually start to propagate into the troposphere. It doesn't always propagate into the troposphere though, but on average it should do when you get a reversal of the zonal winds and start to sort of weaken the polar vortex and possibly produce some northern blocking. This very latest forecast in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA from the GFS model at metroseal.fr. So still very substantial major warming event is taking place. It started in Russia and Siberia around Christmas. It's moved into the North Pole, as you can see. It's around at its peak today, and then tomorrow we should see the temperature sort of levelling off and then starting to drop back, because you can't maintain those very high levels of temperature in the stratosphere all that long. So we start to see them dropping back then as we go through the opening days of January. Excuse me. Although we do see that the GFS is hinting at another renewed burst of warming perhaps occurring sometime into the second week of January. That's being modelled quite consistently, although it is varying from run to run with how intense it gets with that. But we may have another stab at this as we go into the second week of January. This is the parallel GFS run. I haven't shown you the parallel for a little while. So next year, the parallel run will become the main operational GFS run. At the moment, NOAA is just running it in parallel while they iron out any issues with this upgraded version of the GFS model. So again, you see we've got this very substantial warming of the stratosphere occurring over the North Pole at the moment, and as we go to the extended range, it does actually more or less, don't think the GFS operational run does this, but the parallel does, is pretty much splitting the polar vortex there around the 4th of January. That pretty much looks like a split of the polar vortex with two loads of blue, one over sort of Europe and Western Russia, and one over towards Canada, the northeastern part of the Atlantic Ocean, northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean, I should say. So that does look like a bit of a split of the polar vortex. It only lasts very short time, and it looks like the polar vortex starts to re-intensify, get back together a little bit again as we go into more extended range. But very briefly, it does look as though parallel GFS is more or less splitting polar vortex. So there's that second warming occurring in the second week of January. Again, the model is sort of varying from run to run how intense that's getting, but possibly another go to warming the stratosphere at 10 HPA as we move up towards the middle part of January. So it's all still on course, really. Whether we get an actual split of the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere remains to be seen, but everything else still really on course. This is from the University of Berlin, again looking at the temperature at 10 HPA. This was how the temperatures were yesterday. So we've got the North Pole itself highlighted here by the black cross just there. So obviously, yes, the major warming of the stratosphere was taking place over the North Pole. Actually, that's today, it's 28th of December. So obviously, a major warming of the stratosphere is taking place over the North Pole today, and that continues into tomorrow, 29th. As well. On the scale, it looks like we're somewhere, let's go back to there to today. I think today is probably around the peak of the warming. So on the scale, we're going to be somewhere around there, I think, around minus 25 to minus 20, which means on this chart, we could expect to lift this black line up somewhere between there and somewhere between there. So the black line should go up to around that kind of level. As I say, stopping short of the very top of the chart. Sometimes these events can take the black line off the chart. You can get up to 0 degrees. So it won't get quite that high, but I think it does get high enough to be regarded as an actual sudden stratospheric warming. So around minus 25, possibly to minus 20, something like that is around where I think we'll peak with that, with the temperature at 10 HPA over the next couple of days. This takes us through to tomorrow. Very significant warming still forecast to take place then, and still much warmer than average. I mean, we're talking about minus 30 by around New Year's Eve, so still way above average. Gradually, day by day, slowly lowering. That's the 3rd of January. So by then, we're around minus 45 to minus 40, something like that. So gradually, we'll see the temperature dropping away as it can't maintain those very high levels of temperature in the stratosphere indefinitely. That's where we are by the 6th of January, which is day 10. and we're going down to around minus 45 to minus 50 then. So after a peak of around minus 20, minus 25 to minus 20, we go by 6th of January back down to around minus 45 to minus 50. Still warmer than average, even at that point. Going lower down to 30 HPA, that's how things are looking. Oh, and by the way, you can just see possibly the start of a renewed warming of the stratosphere just here by the time we get through to the 6th of January. The ECM might also be picking out a renewed warming of the stratosphere by then. Going low down to minus 30, that's how things are looking on New Year's Day. So again, quite substantial warming of the stratosphere taking place closer to the troposphere at 30 HPA. There it is, just there, taking us to sort of a level of minus 40 to minus 35, something like that. And then that's how things look at day 10. 6th of January shows the temperature beginning to cool down then. We're dropping back to around minus 50 to minus 55. As far as the zone of winds are concerned from the ECMWF forecast, so reversal, we are now into a reversal at 10 to 1 HPA. That's right at the very, very top of the stratosphere. We now see the zone winds have gone into reverse at 1 HPA, and they're going to stay in reverse for the next few days up towards New Year anyway, and then gradually starting to recover, although still much weaker from where they were kind of like a week or so ago. Going down, lower down to 10 and then 30 HPA, we can see a reversal is still on course for a reversal of zone wind still on course for 10 HPA. That's this blue line just here. That's dropping into the level of a reversal of the zone of winds. 30 HPA, it's kind of like hinting at a reverse as well, going down very close to zero, perhaps not quite going into reverse with the zone of winds at 30 HPA, but getting very close to it, and it does. We do see those zone of winds going into reverse at 10 HPA. So basically it's all on course. The sudden stratospheric warming is taking place right now. Today's probably going to be the peak of it. Tomorrow should see that black line lifting up somewhere to around minus 25 to minus 20, something like that. That's about as high as the black line will get on the JMA chart. And then gradually we'll see the temperature beginning to cool down as we go into the first week to 10 days of January. If we can't maintain a very high level of temperature indefinitely. Whether we get a split of the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere, that is one thing that's causing a little bit of confusion at the moment. Still not sure we will get a technical split in the polar vortex, but it looks like the zone of winds are going to go into reverse, which is usually a signal to start to generate blocking 2 or 3 weeks further on in the North Pole. Isn't guaranteed, but often when you get the zone of winds going into reverse, you do get blocking following. So we'll just have to wait and see what the impacts, if any, are of this over the next 2-3 weeks or so. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average on at Wolverhampton in the Midlands today. So up to New Year and even a little bit beyond New Year, that's the 3rd to the 5th of January, just there. Upper air temperatures are staying substantially above average. Very gradually we see those temperatures beginning to lower, beginning to drop. But it's a pretty slow process, so even through the first week of January, generally keeping those upper air temperatures a bit above average. By the very end of a run, which is starting to head up towards the middle of January now, by the very end of the ensemble, we're back closer to average. Precipitation-wise, lots of dry weather for the next week, going to around the 3rd of January. Looks like there's barely any precipitation at all, Wolverhampton. Then from around the 4th, 5th onwards, it looks like it's turning more unsettled, more precipitation spikes coming through. That's been pushed back, though. It was going to be around the 3rd of January that the GFS was hinting at a change to more unsettled conditions yesterday. Now it's pushed back to around the 5th. So high pressure obviously is proving to be more stubborn than the GFS and its ensembles were expected, which is very often the case. Very often the GFS is too progressive at breaking down areas of high pressure. Temperature anomalies are milder than average from the 28th of December through to the 5th of January, above average temperatures for the UK, for Ireland and for much of Northern Europe as well. Precipitation anomalies very substantially drier than average from the 28th of December to the 5th of January, a mild and dry New Year. That's how the GFS operational run looks for New Year's Eve, high pressure centred right over top of the country, dominating. Where that high pressure continues into New Year's Day as well. It actually sort of repositions right over top of the UK on the 2nd of January. And we're up to around 1,040 millibars there. So the model will break it down quite quickly, I suppose, or I assume. But very often, when you're up to that kind of level, 1,035, 1,040 millibars, it can be quite a slow process to break those big ridges down. It may get a bit colder as well, with that high pressure centrally locating over top of the UK. Wouldn't be at all surprised if next week we start to generate some frost and fog. That's Thursday the 3rd. We're still more or less under high pressure even then, but it is beginning to slip, the centre of it beginning to slip down towards France. Then by the time it goes through to Friday the 4th and Saturday the 5th, talking about the high pressure has very quickly been broken down, and we're into that westerly flow. But the GFS has put that back. Yesterday it was going to be around the 3rd of January when that change happened. Now it's around the 5th. So let's just wait and see whether the high pressure does break down that quickly. But by the 5th of January, the GFS places us back into this unsettled westerly flow. Then we go off and running into an unsettled extended range. Got a little bit beyond day 10. We're up to Tuesday, the 8th of January, and it looks very unsettled indeed. And we keep it unsettled into the 2nd week of January as well. That's how we look right at the very end. Sunday, the 13th of January finds, again, low pressure is dominating weather. We'll bring down some slightly cooler air from the northwest as well. But again, still no sign of a genuine blocking signal. Still no sign, up to that point, for 13th of January, still no sign of a tropospheric response in terms of blocking to the stratospheric warming. GFS parallel run looking like this. Again, high pressure is in control for the new year, very much centred over the top of the country, and gradually it might be getting a bit colder through the course of next week with frost and fog becoming a little bit more likely. Heading up towards day 10, that high pressure is breaking down, so that's how we look at day 10, which is Monday 7th of January. Looks unsettled by then. We've broken the ridge down and we've gone back into a westerly flow. And then again, in the extended range, we keep things pretty unsettled, though always with high pressure, never too far away from the south and southeast, but it's still up to the 13th of January, which is as far as we can go, still looking quite mild. Winds are still coming in from off the Atlantic, still no sign of any blocking, still no sign of any high pressure around Greenland, still no sign of any high pressure around Scandinavia, still no sign of high pressure over our side of the Arctic. So again, up to the 13th of January, the GFS is not yet finding any tropospheric response to the stratospheric warming. ECMWF looking like that. New Year's Eve again with high pressure centred over the top of the UK. Lots of dry weather continuing into the new year. That high pressure starts to become centrally located over the UK through next week, possibly increasing the risk of colder temperatures with frost and fog. Real northerly is plunging down into eastern parts of Europe as well through the course of next week. So winter really will be biting for the Baltic states down towards the Black Sea, eastern parts of Europe. Winter will really be setting in over there. We remain under that ridge of high pressure, and that is still going on up to Saturday the 5th of January. So by this point, the GFS is breaking this ridge down and returning us to a westerly. The ECM still has that ridge more or less centred over the top of the country on Saturday the 5th, and even up to Monday the 7th, day 10, we still have quite a strong influence from high pressure. So whether this high pressure ever does break down, or whether it's just going to keep hanging around the UK and possibly turning us colder, frostier and foggier next week, we'll have to wait and see. Last thing I want to show you is the temperature and precipitation anomalies from the ECMWF 30-day forecast from the Hungarian Met Office. I haven't got time to go through everything that's happening across the whole of Europe, of course. So the actual 30-day forecast for the UK and for Europe will return a week on Tuesday. I think that will be the 8th of January. We'll have the first one of those. But this is how the week 1 temperature anomaly is looking. You'll see generally from the 31st, New Year's Eve of January through to December through to 6th of January, it's milder than average for the UK for Ireland. Notice Eastern Europe and Southern Europe looking really quite cold though. Precipitation wise, it looks like that, so very dry. So just what we've been talking about really into the new year, mild and dry conditions really through the UK and much of Western Europe as well. But week 2 looks like that. So this is the 7th to the 13th of January. And we find the temperatures are cooling down around the UK. Although much of France, Germany, still warmer than average there, milder than average. Near normal temperatures over across the eastern part of Europe. So that cold northerly shot through the first week of January doesn't look like it lasts all that long. The eastern parts of Europe. Precipitation-wise, looks very unsettled through this second week of January. Remember, this is the 7th to the 13th of January. Much wetter than average through most of Western Europe. So the idea, I think, is high pressure to dominate through the first week of January around the UK, and then the breakdown does take place by the second week of January, turning much more unsettled, with temperatures lowering, but precipitation increasing. That's week 3, the 14th to the 20th of January, has colder than average temperatures appearing across Scandinavia, and cooler than average temperatures starting to develop close to the UK, as well as many sort of eastern, southeastern parts of Europe are turning milder than average. So turning milder in the east and the southeast, it's turning colder though in the northwest into the third week of January. Precipitation wise, it's still looking very unsettled across the west of Europe, but maybe not quite as much as in week 2, and it's going wetter than average down towards Spain and Portugal. It's going a little bit drier than average, you'll notice, to our north. So drier than average close to Norway, drier than average around Iceland. That could be a sign that high pressure is beginning to develop in the northern latitudes, starting perhaps to move a jet stream further southwards in towards southern parts of Europe. And then we go through to week 4. And this is the 21st to the 27th of January, and it's looking colder than average then for much of northern western Scandinavia, much of the UK and Ireland looking colder than average, below average temperature anomalies, warmer than average, milder than average across the south and southeast of Europe. So that's one of the classic balancing acts that tends to occur. If it's milder than average in the southeast, it will tend to be colder than average in the northwest, and vice versa. If it's milder than average in the northwest of Europe, it will tend to be warmer than average in the southeast Europe. Other areas across central parts of Europe, they can go either way, but it does look as though we're going further and further into January, and the signals are getting colder for the UK and for Ireland. Precipitation wise, you'll notice again substantially dry. It's getting drier to the north of the UK, so drier than average again close to Iceland, drier than average towards Norway. This could be signs of northern blocking developing to the north of the country, wetter than average through the central and southern parts of Europe. That could be implying the jet stream taking a southerly track. And so the ECM looks like it's hinting that as we go further into January, the chances of colder and more blocked conditions are increasing. Now, of course, it's weeks 3 and 4. We're getting colder and more blocked, but it does tie in with JMA Friday, what the Japanese model was showing. That was showing something quite similar to that, with an anticyclonic start, then a wetter westerly phase in the second week of January, and then we're into weeks 3 and 4, and the signs were there with the JMA model of blocking and potentially colder conditions. I think the ECM is trending in that direction as well. CFS wasn't really there at all, though. CFS wanted to keep things rather westerly even into the second half of January. So it all remains to be seen, and I suspect a lot of this is going to be down to what the effects is of this Sudden Stratospheric Warming. Will we get a tropospheric response? Will we set up a block over the Arctic? Or will we struggle to get a tropospheric response? Because you don't always set up blocking after a sudden stratospheric warming. So I expect that holds the key to what's going to happen through January, and potentially even further on into the winter, into February. But of course, February could be dominated by another warming of the stratosphere that could happen at some point through the course of January. So it's all quite interesting, I think, but we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out over the next few weeks. But that's it for your videos for today. Tomorrow we're going to have a weekend forecast. That's going to be taking us through the first days of January 2019. And we'll also have a week to 10 day video update, bringing you update with all of the latest with the sudden stratospheric warming and everything else as well. So come back for that tomorrow. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.